This workflow video will aim to show how we can use the catchment tools within Civil 3D to help with our conceptual layout of our pipe networks and set up our hydrology in InfoDrainage. The model I have here is a small development with a run of pipes conceptually drawn in and they're draining towards a downstream detention basin. I can use the Project Explorer tool to just have a look at that pipe that's been primarily drawn out. The next thing I want to do is generate some catchments using my surface model and the structures for my drainage network. I first can come to the Analyze tool, and from the ground data section hit the drop down for catchments, and we're going to run the catchment area tool. So this tool is going to allow us to select a discharge point, and it will generate a catchment upstream of that point for us. So I'm just going to turn off display the discharge point and press OK. Then I'm going to select one discharge point just downstream of my first manhole, then just downstream of my second manhole, and I'll also specify one for the area draining to the basin. And I'll just close out that for now. One of the other tools we have in Civil 3D is the flow path generation tool, or the water drop. So this will let us specify a drop of water on the surface, and it will draw the path that it takes to the downstream end. So we can check this for the catchments I've just drawn, plus other locations along my surface. So this tool could be useful for determining any time of concentration calculations that are required for some hydrology methods. Now, the catchment tool in Civil 3D is great for determining the total upstream catchment of a point. But if we have a situation where we're splitting a catchment up because we have various inlets running along some road corridor, we need to make sure that we aren't double counting the areas, as you can see with this case. So we just need to do a little bit of extra work to make sure that we're taking the appropriate area. So I'm going to select these two catchments and then isolate the objects. The tool that we use is going to be the boundary tool. So select, start typing in boundary, and we'll take the default options, press OK, and then we're going to select an internal point in the larger catchment. We can see that clips to the outside of the smaller catchment, and we're going to press enter to accept. Now I'll just delete the original large catchment and I'll end the isolation. Now we have all our catchments, and we want to now create an InfoDrainage model to start setting up our hydrology. What we could do is import this drawing file into InfoDrainage, and it would automatically bring in our catchments, and if we had the same conceptual pipe network laid out, it would automatically drain to the downstream structure that's contained within the catchment. But we're just going to assign these catchments to the structures within Civil 3D first, and then export to InfoDrainage. So to do that, we come back to the catchment drop-down, and this time we're going to select Create Catchment from Object. Now it's prompting me to select my first catchment polyline. So I'll select that and then skip the flow path. I am just going to keep most of the defaults assigned here, but I'm going to use the pick tool to select which structure the catchment is draining to. So press OK, and then I'll repeat the process for the remaining two catchments. Okay, so now I have generated my 3 catchments, and we can see that there is now a catchment group created. Lastly, in Civil 3D, what we're going to do is now export this model out to an InfoDrainage file, so then we can set up our hydrology. So I'm just going to save it to this file, select the pipe network, and choose to export the surface as well. And I'm just going to load in a template which will automatically map the 3D parts in Civil 3D to the specific parts in InfoDrainage. Now, if we open up InfoDrainage and open the model we just created, we can see all the data we had in Civil 3D is now has now come across into InfoDrainage for us to continue working with it. To start off, I'm just going to load in a display template. So I can see my contours and my catchments clearly now. If I open up one of the catchment properties, I can see here that by default, we just have the time of concentration method selected for our runoff method. What we're going to do now is load in an object template. So this is a project template that's been created that will contain typically used elements such as runoff hydrology based on certain land use types, but it can contain things like typically used manholes or inlets, typically used basins, swales, or any standard culverts, pipes, and channel sizes as well. So these can be spread across multiple InfoDrainage projects. What we're interested in is setting up our hydrology based upon the rafts or the rinse and runoff method with a few parameters already set up for typical residential land uses. So now that I've loaded the template in, all I need to do is select all my catchments, right click on screen and change the template to that rafts residential type. And I can turn on some of the properties in the plan view by going to the annotations and applying all. We can see we now have all my catchments with the appropriate hydrology method, and we can begin to simulate and size up our network.